This is the fun session for us. We've been talking a lot about very serious stuff, but today we're still going to be serious, but in a different kind of way. We're going to talk about causes that concern us and what gives us hope. And this is an icon session, which means that today we have three very special guests. One is the very famous and very charming and popular former Minister of Youth and Sport of Malaysia, Pak Syed Siddiq. Then next we have Indonesian entertainer, also a good friend of mine, Cinta Laura Kiel. And then we have also very famous and probably one of the most well-known Filipina celebrities, Heart Evangelista, right? And this is a session where all of them will talk about, during the time of COVID-19, what is it that gives them, what is it they're passionate about and they think the public should pay attention to. So maybe with that introduction, we're gonna start right away. I would like to say hello to Syed. Thank you for being with us, Pak Syed. And I should say that Pak Syed is a very smart young man. He probably one of the youngest politicians in Malaysian politics. He graduated from Temple University. He was shortlisted for one Young World Politician of the Year. He's doing currently a Master in Public Policy from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. He served as Member of Parliament in Muar since 2018, and he recently founded the Malaysian United Democratic Alliance, or MUDA, in September 2020. Pak Syed, the floor is yours. Tell me what you are passionate about and what cause that you think people should pay attention to.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Doctor, for the great introduction. I feel very passionate about youth activism and youth advocacy. I'm a firm believer that young people should not just be treated as leaders of tomorrow, but should also be acknowledged as leaders of today. Especially if you look during the times of COVID. While these are tough times, I think it opens up new rooms for young people to overtake existing elite establishment and existing political structures. So if you look at the current reports, look at the report by CNBC, top 50 disruptors. While in America, for example, there are more than 40 million Americans who have who have been jobless. However, the top 50 disruptors there, which are predominantly run by young people, are hiring a lot more people, and at the same time are now leading the charge of the global economy. At the same time, you also see a great problem in current economic system where you look at the billionaires in America, that while more than 40 million people have been jobless, however, their total net wealth have increased by more than $500 billion. In China, their billionaires have increased their net wealth by more than $1.5 trillion US. What does this all mean? It means that while this is a time of crisis, it is also a time of great opportunities. And these opportunities will come predominantly when young people dare to think critically and out of the box and treat themselves as disruptors. This is the age of connectivity, the age of the fourth industrial revolution, the age in which those who think conventionally will fall behind. And to me, the reason why this presents such a great opportunity towards young people across the world is because at the moment, based on the current conventional system, young people are placed at a great disadvantage. We don't have the great long experience like those who are much older than us. We don't have the financial capital like those who have been in the market for decades. We don't have the networking like those who have been in the market for decades. However, what we do have is that we do have a great disruptive mindset. We do dare to think critically out of the box and unconventionally to resolve conventional problems. So I think young people of today should seize that opportunity to treat ourselves and our generation as a generation of disruptors to ensure that we shake the system and that we climb up much faster and not just follow the same conventional pathway which many others will go through. I think that's just the first part of it when we look at the current economic structure. I feel particularly passionate about activism and youth activism, which I think not just in an economic sense, but more on a political viewpoint. So I was privileged enough to be appointed as the youngest minister in Malaysia in 2018, Minister of Youth and Sports. And my story in politics is an uncommon one, because in Malaysia, in order for you to start young, you must be well connected, you must come from a political elite or political family, which I do not come from. I come from a working class family. My mom is a teacher. My father was a laborer who commutes from Johor to Singapore every single day, and he did many different odd jobs. But coming from that background, it taught me a lot that politics should be about constructive politics, politics of service. It is about empowering democratic institutions, and at the same time, it's about bringing many other young people together with me, so that in the end, we move as a collective, not only as an individual. So when I joined politics, it was at a very interesting moment in Malaysia where we went through one of the biggest financial scandals, which then propelled me into politics. And then when I did decide to go on the front line, immediately the politics of suppression and threats came in. I lost my job as a part-time lecturer, as a researcher under the Johor state government. My parents, my mom in particular, who was a civil servant, was threatened in many ways. However, that in no way broke our spirit. It just increased our resolve to move forward, to ensure that we change Malaysia once and for all. And when I contested the very first time in my constituency in Muar, Alhamdulillah, I won, and then was elevated as the Minister of Youth and Sports. In a way, I believe that politics should open up greater pathways for many of the young people to join, so that in the end, we youthify politics. When I served as a cabinet minister, in less than 22 months, I was able to push for 3 critical constitutional reforms, which will then increase the youth voter base in Malaysia by more than 7.8 million new young voters due to the reduction of the voting age from 21 years old to 18 years old. We were able to increase minimum wage from 900 ringgit to 1,200 ringgit. We were able to get and secure a huge job stimulus package, which will impact young people and create 300,000 jobs for young people of all backgrounds, especially those who come from underprivileged family background. So in a way, it is about the politics of service. And when you're there, you want to ensure that you bring a lot more young people in the front line, so that in the end, people don't treat the youth as liabilities. They don't see just because we are young and we don't share the level of experience as those who are much older than us, that automatically we are much weaker and incapable than that. That's not true. Yeah. For those who say that once youth is a liability, I think the best answer to them is to work hard, to work diligently, to think out of the box, and to prove them wrong through our success. And I firmly believe that this should not just be a trend in Malaysia, but across the world. We see in Indonesia, where President Jokowi appointed Nadiem Makarim as the Minister of Education, a good friend of mine. And I hope in other countries we can see that trend, especially in Southeast Asia. We see that trend happening in Europe. You have people like Sanna Marin of Finland. You have Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand. You have Macron of France, and Trudeau of Canada. I think in Southeast Asia we should have a rise of young leaders from different countries, charting a new pathway for Southeast Asia for greater unity and prosperity, and especially those who feel passionately to fight for those who are underprivileged in their own countries. So politics should not be a destructive path, but one which is constructive, one which builds unity and greater diversity among all people.
Yeah. Do you think, as a young person who gets into politics and sat in a position of power, do you think there's a lot of people who join politics for the wrong reason? You mentioned about public service, but there are people who joined it for money, for privilege, for other things other than public service. I mean, do you see a lot of that around Southeast Asia and even around the world? Yeah.
Absolutely, and that's why I'm a firm believer of decentralizing power and empowering democratic institutions. The last thing which you want is for a young idealistic person to join politics and in the end get eaten up by the swarm of dirty politics. Because, for example, if we don't practice the same dirty money politics, in the end, we will just die out. We will get our head cut off and immediately we get eaten by the system or kicked out by the system. So in order for us to chart a new pathway of politics, it is about decentralizing power and empowering democratic institutions by empowering, for example, a strong anti-corruption culture, by empowering the parliament, by ensuring that politicians in the end are held accountable to the people in all times, not just during times of election, by empowering an independent media which can scrutinize the actions of each and every single politician. I think when that happens, that's when you see young idealistic politicians who choose to enter politics for the right reasons will maintain that path. Because the last thing which we want is for politics to be personality based, where you have great idealistic young people who join politics for the right reasons, but because politics is inherently destructive and dirty, if they don't play the game, they will be eaten up or they will be kicked out. And that's bad. And that's why in the end, we need to empower the democratic norms in Southeast Asia. We need to ensure that in the end, there's a great culture of transparency and accountability, so that in the end, when we rise together with the right people, right reasons, and right values, we shall chart a great way forward for Southeast Asia.
Okay, before I move to Cinta Laura Kiel, one interesting question I want to ask you, because I once joined politics as well, but I couldn't handle it, so I got out, right? But Pa Sadiq, you're obviously a brilliant young politician. You're very idealistic. You have this can-do attitude. But do you think you're a minority in the sea of politicians, around Malaysia or around the region?
I believe that Southeast Asia and the nations of Southeast Asia are in no way deprived of talent. We have great talents. Malaysia, Indonesia, oh my God, I frequent Indonesia a lot, and we are some of the brightest and amazing and smartest of people I've had the privilege of meeting. The only problem is when we don't give them opportunities to climb up, when the existing power structures is very exclusive, they kick out those who pose a threat to existing politicians. That's when it becomes a problem. So we don't have a deficit of great young leaders in Southeast Asia. It's just that we need to break a lot more glass ceilings, a lot more walls which imprison the great potential of young people in Southeast Asia. So while it may be a minority of existing politicians, but I know that there are many, many others who are interested, who feel that they want to contribute, to join for the right reasons. So it is our responsibility for those who are already in politics to bring them up, to pull them in together, to build great networks, not just in our respective countries, but in Southeast Asia overall. So in the end, when we climb up together, we create a strong lobby movement in Southeast Asia among young Southeast Asian leaders to ensure that we demand for great accountability, transparency, democratic norms. So in the end, we work for the interests of the underprivileged in particular. So we can do it. There are great talents out there. It's just about moving forward together.
Thank you. Just listening to you gives me a lot of hope. Yeah. So thank you for that. Now we move on to Cinta Laura Kiel, who is a very famous Indonesian celebrity. She dances, she sings, she acts. She is also an entrepreneur. She graduated from Columbia University. She can do everything really. She's got all the talents, all the heart, and she's quite admired by millions of Indonesians. Cinta, thank you for joining us. What is your passion these days? What is the cause that drives you?
Wow. First of all, thank you for the introduction, and apologies for where I am right now. I'm in a car, given the fact that I'm on set, but thank you for having me here today. Since our conversation today pertains to times during the pandemic, I would say that I've always been very passionate about education, but even more so now during this pandemic, because obviously a lot of children who are attending school, university, they're all forced to learn from home, at least the majority. And in a country like Indonesia, we're still experiencing a great digital gap. You know, we assume that yes, although I mean, I love this country so much, you know, we assume we're super interconnected and Wi-Fi signal, internet connection exists everywhere, but unfortunately it doesn't. Indonesia is an archipelago. And if you go to cities outside of major cities like Jakarta or Bandung or Surabaya or Medan, people still struggle to get simple and not only that, yes, the majority of individuals in Indonesia now do own a smartphone. But still, if you own a smartphone and you can't connect to the internet in order to get your study materials, how can you learn? Another issue is many of these kids need to be guided by someone who can teach them class material. But unfortunately, if you're talking about those under the poverty line, or those who have not completed their education, they can't help guide their kids in studying and reaching their maximum potential. So this has become a great issue. This might sound like a little bit of an aside, but I promise I have a point. We've noticed a major spike in sexual violence and abuse during this pandemic, and women's rights and child protection has been something that I've really focused on in the last year and a half. And if kids are not only unable to learn to their maximum capability, but how can they also know how to, you know, treat each other with respect and kindness? Because, you know, we've discovered through various surveys that a lot of public educational institutions still lack classes that teach gender equal values. So we're seeing that now through the rates that, sorry, I just heard an echo. We're now seeing through statistics that a lot of women and children are suffering from abuse, and there's just a big disparity in education. So yes, so to put it simply, I didn't prepare a huge presentation for you all, but these are the things I'm very worried about, because we might experience a huge education gap in the next 2 to 5 years, because many kids in Indonesia now are missing a whole year of school. So we can't expect them to rely on technology in order to learn.
Yeah. Chinta, are you worried about the disparity in education in the sense that in Indonesia, if you want to have good education, you got to pay a lot of money, right? And if you don't have money, then you're not getting the education that is competitive, right? That is of a proper standard, right? Which means that educational access is dependent on economic mobility as well. You know, so you see this as a long-term problem for our human capital. Yeah.
I mean, this is absolutely true. I don't think it is my place to judge what the education system is like, or at least the public education system, but I've heard from many of my peers who did go through the public education system that oftentimes they're only taught to memorize, they're not taught to think critically. So they're not taught to view things from various different perspectives, and therefore don't acquire their own opinions regarding various issues that exist. And you're right, now with the digital gap, not only are people who don't have the means to go to good schools incapable of learning, the accessibility becomes even more difficult.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I do notice that one of the biggest challenges for our education system is encouraging critical thinking. You're totally right on this. I think the problem is that our teachers do not encourage critical thinking enough, and a lot of kids go to universities not being trained in critical thinking. Yeah, but what would you be the solution to that? Should we retrain our teachers and change our curriculum and methods of teaching?
Yeah. Yes, I think there should be a curriculum change. And not only that, I think it's so important to create a grassroots education platform that can penetrate more isolated regions in Indonesia, because I feel like our education system is very much focused on urban areas. And so we're neglecting the fact that, you know, people don't just live in urban areas in this country. It's such a huge country. So it's imperative that we create smaller learning hubs so that we can really focus on kids who do not have the same facilities as we do in the city.
Yeah. Are you concerned that in Indonesia, for example, out of so many high school graduates, very few actually make it to the university level in higher education, right? Which means that a large part of our labor force are stuck with high school degrees, and actually the majority are stuck with elementary degree, which means they will not have the economic mobility. You know, how do you see that?
I think it's most definitely very problematic, and I feel like we should create more scholarship programs in this country, because a lot of kids feel like they also don't have the opportunity to move up the social hierarchy. And based on my personal experience, my family and I actually own a foundation called Sukarseno Peduli. And since 2004, we've rebuilt dilapidated schools in the area of West Java. And what we found is, prior to the rebuilding of those schools, when we would ask children there what they would like to be when they grow up, oftentimes we would not receive a response. They would stare at us in silence because they don't have a dream to nurture. And it was only until we provided them with the various facilities and also practical skills beyond, you know, the schooling system to learn, that they suddenly realized, oh, there's a whole world out there for me to explore, and I am capable. And you know, I think our education system oftentimes doesn't cherish creativity, as we've addressed a few minutes ago. It's very much memorization based, and it's time that we change the system, because in order to become strong future leaders, we need to be innovative, creative, and able to think out of the box.
Yes, thank you very much, Chinta, and I'm really glad that you came out of the jungle from the set, right? Yeah, and had to find internet to join this program. So our next.
This proves our point, though. I'm currently in the city of Yogyakarta in East Java, and I'm only 35 minutes out of the city, and I am struggling to find internet connection, which shows you there must be hundreds of thousands of kids in this area alone who are struggling to learn because they don't have the connection. You know, yes, people argue for the fact that they don't have smartphones either, but if you had a smartphone, what's the point of it if you can't even connect and retrieve class material?
Yeah, well said. Thank you, Chinta. And now we move on to our next guest, which is Heart Evangelista. She's from the Philippines. For those outside Philippines who might not know who she is, she developed her career since the age of 13 as a commercial model and actress. I won't tell everybody how old you are, obviously, but after all these years, she's very well established, and she's now a best-selling author, a fashion influencer, a beauty icon, and entrepreneur. And she's also one of the country's most recognized celebrities, and an advocate for children's health and education, and individuals with special needs and animal welfare. She's also the First Lady of Sorsogon Province, I hope I say it right, and a member of Vogue 100, and she is an animal welfare advocate and PAWS ambassador. Welcome, Hart, and please tell me, what is it that you are passionate about? Yeah.
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you so much for inviting me. This is just really a pleasure, and to be able to, for you guys to share the stage and this platform with me is just fantastic. And this is the best way I can share what I'm most passionate about during this pandemic, especially with the mental health. Definitely an issue. It's something that not a lot of people talk about openly. yes, all over the country, the percentages have been rising with suicides and depression and anxiety. But in a way, it's still not as normalized as it should be. I feel that the conversation definitely should keep going for us to be able to get rid of the stigma. It's very personal. It's a very personal topic for me because I myself, doing what I'm doing for 24 years, with all the pressure of show business and trying to be beautiful, trying not to be scandalous and all of that. That just, that does something to you subconsciously, and it does in a way damage your soul. And I do believe that a lot of people are struggling with, not just mental, it's deeper than mental. It's like healing your soul. And I feel that it's something that we should talk about. For me, I'd like to start with my own experience, of course, for those who know me. For those who know it, don't know me, I'm on Instagram, and you can see my photos. Everything is very curated. Everything is sort of kind of close to perfect. But every time that I have a chance to talk about the realities of this world, which are concerning me, which is mental health, I'd go for it because I want to show people that we should start the conversation, that it is a problem, and that the moment that we acknowledge that I have a problem, and then you can ask for help. I have gotten to a point in my life where I didn't know what was wrong. I had everything in my life, and I didn't know why I was unhappy when I should be happy. And at this point, I kind of felt like a lemon, like a defect. And I know for sure that there are a lot of people out there that feel the same way. And I feel that by me talking about it, yeah, some people would probably say, oh, she's crazy or whatever. But this is the reality of my life, and it's a struggle every day. And I know that people are also struggling every day. But you know what? It's okay to not be okay. And that if there's anything that you feel that it's impossible or you'll never get out of it, you will get out of it. I've gotten to a point where I've thought of a lot of things. And, mental health and mental illness, suicide, depression is also one of the great equalizers. I know a lot of privileged families that have lost their children because they've committed suicide, and usually it comes out of nowhere. It's not because it's anybody's fault. It's because sometimes we don't talk about it as much, or there aren't enough outlets for us to go to, or forums or places. I know Department of Health here in the Philippines recently launched a hotline, but I just recently found out about this, meaning it's not still a major issue that is discussed. So people who are suffering with depression, anxiety, or suicidal thoughts need to know that there's a place that they can go to, that they can acknowledge their feelings, that it's not the end of the tunnel or the end of the road. You can do something about it. And it's just sad when you hear so many stories about people losing their lives because they feel like it's not that, no, they can't talk to anyone. They can, but they don't know how to. So I really, really want to advocate about being, outspoken about how you feel, not just how you look or what you wear or what you post on Instagram. And that's also in connection with mental health and youth and Instagram and social media, that it's okay to take a break from social media because, you don't have to feel guilty that you're not on social media because, of course, a lot of the young ones rely on social media for news and all of that, but it's okay to detach yourself a little bit, to take care of yourself, to take care of your mental health and your soul. And so, because when you see people post on social media, they're all like outputs, like thousands, millions of outputs that are kind of embedded in your mind. And when you go to sleep, sometimes your thoughts become too loud. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that because that is what it is, when you have anxiety, depression, you're drowned with your thoughts. And in connection to the pandemic, with not having access to the outside world and being isolated, you tend to feel more alone and you tend to overthink. And so I just want to be here and give comfort to those that in the earlier times when there were pandemics, we didn't have Netflix, we didn't have cell phones or cell phones with cameras. And yes, there are pros and cons with social media and technology, but you have to think about, you have to find something good about this. This is the great pause. It's not like you're the only one that took a pause. It's not like you're pressured that you're the only one that's taking a pause and everybody's waiting for you, everybody's on pause. So if you are alone during this pandemic and you're going through something delicate, like, suffering with your mental issues, that you can use your phone. You don't have to wait for anybody to call you. You can call, you can talk to people, get the conversation started, and know that it's normal to not be okay. And yes, going back to the pandemic, um, this is the time where you can really rediscover yourself. I'm not a cook, but I started to cook. I don't bake. I started to make, cookies just recently, and you'll be able to really discover yourself. So it's really about just being busy and rediscovering yourself and trying to not focus on, which is inevitable at times, yes, but the uncertainties of what life is presenting to us at this very moment. You have to go back, take care of yourself, take care of your soul, discover yourself. And one day, when the world is ready to relaunch, you'll also be ready to relaunch a better version of yourself. And that you are not alone. I guess that's what I'm just trying to say, that it's, again, okay not to be okay. It's understandable that we're all going through, this period in time where we overthink and we're depressed and we're anxious. It's normal. But again, you have to open your eyes and see that there's so many outlets around you that you can take to make sure that you'll be better. And hopefully also with this platform and the audience that I'm given today, I could also, say that mental health should be discussed more often. We have to make it normal because a lot of people are suffering, and that we have to acknowledge everyone's feelings about it.
Yeah. That's very beautiful, wonderful, Heart. My question is, we know we're gonna see an avalanche of mental health issues as a result of the pandemic, right? A lot of people are depressed. They stay in small quarters with 5 people, and psychologically that's very hard to do, and so on. Some people are becoming suicidal. People are getting prone to violence, and so on. So my question to you: at what point should they treat it just by talking to somebody, to their family, to a good friend, or should they see a psychologist? Right, and I'm not being mean about this, but there's definitely a need for psychological services to many COVID-19 survivors, right? So at one point, is it talk to a friend or talk to a psychologist? Yeah.
Well, honestly, I think help comes in different forms. So whichever help works for you. Again, most of the people don't come out because they're afraid of the stigma. Now, if it's easier for you to talk to a close friend, that would be good. But what's important is you talk to someone. But I am all for seeking help. Like, I guess you talk to someone you trust, so then they can also help you find the next help, which is seeing a doctor. Honestly, when I went through it, I went to 7 to 8 doctors. I went to all doctors. I went to neurologists and oncologists. I tried to discover what was going on with me. And when I figured out what was going on with me, I realized that everything is treatable. And so that's why it's important to just talk to someone. I think that's the first step, and not keep it in you bottled up.
Yes, and I think it's also a good message to families that fathers and mothers, you gotta double up,
Yes.
about embracing your kids more so than usual, because this is time when they need most emotional
Exactly.
cushions, right? Yeah.
And really, it's really more sometimes a generational gap. It's also like how their parents raised them. My parents are very conservative. I don't know how I them. So that's also a factor. So I guess not just for the young ones that are listening, it's also for the parents, for the older generation to understand. Because I've come across, doctors also that are a bit more older that tell me, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just too much social media. No, sometimes it's more than that. So they also have to really broaden their thinking and understand, because it is a serious problem.
Good. Well, now let's take some question. I want to ask some questions, and feel free, anyone who wants to jump in. Obviously, Pak Sadiq, Cinta Laura Akil, and Heart Evangelista are idealists, right? You want to commit to a cause that is unselfish, right? And my question to you is it true that it's hard to be an idealist? As people do things and they get challenged and they get tempted, how hard is it to maintain your idealism? Yeah. So anyone who wants to respond to that, yeah.
Yeah. So if I may respond first, I think being young, we must always have that strong sense of idealism embedded in us. If not, we will just be a part of the same system and same problem, and the lack of any willpower to challenge and confront existing problems. However, it's also important to balance out idealism with pragmatism. So you don't want to go full Machiavellian, where the end justifies the means and you'll do whatever it takes to achieve that end, even if it means steamrolling the process. However, so I think it's about finding that unique middle ground where you combine both idealism and pragmatism. And I think the best middle ground to ensure that you can save that idealism is to go in as a group, as a collective, not only as an individual, because that's when you have natural checks and balances. You have your friends, you have your family members, you have your allies continuously reminding you as to why you have embarked on this path and you want to stay on this principled path. The second part to it as well, as I mentioned before, is to decentralize power and empower democratic institutions, because you may come in clean and with the right intentions. However, if you don't correct the system, then you may fall into the temptations of the temptations of going down the wrong path. However, if the system is corrected, then you will naturally check on yourself, because you know that you don't want to get into trouble, you know that the media is there to scrutinize, you know that democracy is there, which is highly transparent and will hold you accountable. So I think these two things are very important. But for young people, if someone asks me what's the balance between pragmatism and idealism, always go for idealism. Because you always want to have that burning desire and passion in you to keep on working hard for the underprivileged, for your beliefs and your causes. And you do not want to lose that idealism too early to the point that you get co-opted by the system.
Okay. Cinta, you have any thoughts? Is it hard to maintain idealism?
I agree with what Sayed said, but in addition to that, oftentimes when someone is referred to as an idealist, it's because the majority doesn't agree to, your ideas or what you believe in. And in my case, I believe that if you have a certain idea and you know it's for the greater good of the people, and you have evidence to back up what you say, just continue, preaching what you believe in, because at the end of the day, if you continue to convey your message, it will be heard. Just be persistent and consistent. And I think that is very important.
Okay, good. Hart, if you haven't, do you want to comment on that? Or go ahead.
Yes, in a nutshell, it's really hard to fight. I mean, hard to keep up with a good fight. But, at the end of the day, we just have to all be grounded. I mean, in a nutshell, but I agree with what everybody else said.
Yes. The next question is, you all of you young, at least young looking.
We are young.
And, I noticed this. There's quite a lot of cynicism and pessimism among the young people. I see this in Indonesia, in Europe, and Malaysia and Philippines. I'm just wondering, why is this? Why is there so much cynicism on the part of young people, where there actually should be the other way around? There should be the most, optimistic people. So what happens to these segment of young people who feel just cynical and apathetic and pessimistic about things? Yeah. Does anyone want to explain that? Yeah.
I
Please.
go first?
Please. Hard.
I feel it's because, younger generations now are more aware. They're more aware with what's happening. And I guess they now acknowledge their future and what they want in life. And that's why they don't want to give in to things that are just halfway. They want everything good. And that's why I think you have all these rants from Instagram, from social media, on Facebook about everything that's going on. Although I must admit, I'm not sure if I'm really part of that generation because I think I'm a bit older, but some people look at it
You're
as
still young. Don't. Okay.
Some people think that it's very toxic, or when you're being positive, you're toxic positive. But honestly, at the end of the day, I think in a way, in an odd way, it's still very good because it just says that everyone is caring for it. Everyone's starting to care about politics, about government, what's going on, what's needed. And I guess that's just part of it. And I hope with everything that's being said on social media that also in a way government will also hear them out, because I'm sure.
Okay. Pak Sadiq, you want to comment on that? Yes.
Yeah. So I think there's a great power distance or a gap between the rich and powerful elite with the working class, which contributes to it. As I mentioned just now, just look at the United States. During times of COVID, where more than 40 million have been unemployed, the collective wealth of the billionaires have increased by more than $500 billion. In China, more than 1.5 trillion. So there's a big gap which creates great distrust and dislike. So that also falls in the realm of politics, where, for an example, people don't see that their voices, their concerns are heard and well represented by the political establishment and the elite. For example, in terms of their lifestyle, where some of them have 10, 15 houses, so many different offshore accounts, have so many sports cars here and there, which creates a great problem and distrust in the political establishment. That's where people think that politics is about accumulation of wealth and not about the politics of the service, where you choose to serve the people. And I think we have to change that. We have to change that culture to show that there should be transparency and accountability moving forward. So I think if we're able to shorten that gap, in Malaysia, I remember immediately when I was elected, there were so many privileges which were accorded to me. I could import expensive foreign cars to be used by myself. There were so many different types of privileges. I can get land, which I didn't exercise, nor which I chose. In the end, I still use a local-made car. And to me, I'm living still a very comfortable life. I don't need all these excesses. At the same time, I was offered many different dignitaries. You get names, Datuk here, Datuk Sri here, and then people call you Yang Berhormat, which to me, it's not. I always tell them, don't call me Yang Berhormat, just call me Sadiq or Syed. It's fine. So you don't want to create that great gap, between your constituents and those who have been elected, because in the end, power is temporary. You can be kicked out at any point in time by your constituents, because that's the beauty of a democracy. So I think the point in which we reduce the gap, the power distance gap, I believe young people will get a lot more involved, especially as Evangelista rightfully pointed out, that they are a lot more informed. They know what's going on. So never ever underestimate the will and the intellect of the electorate. They know what they want, and if you fail to represent them, they will punish you.
Good. I hope more and more people join politics, really, because in Indonesia, young people are allergic to politics, right? They tend to stay away, and if they want to change things, it's best for them to change it by joining government and parliament and so on, right? So, sorry, Laura, you look like you want to say something.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, very well expressed, Ahart and Sayed, and I agree to all those things. I guess from a psychological perspective, I would also say that the youth is privy to so much information. We're privy to a lot of information, and sometimes, again, back to education, kids aren't taught to discern fake news from real news. And therefore, it's so important to cross-reference. And with all this negative news around us, we can't help but psychologically be affected by those things. And I think that really does create greater pessimism amongst the youth. So, I think both Syed and Hart already expressed their opinions in such an eloquent manner, and I just wanted to add to that by talking about it from a psychological perspective. But yes, the abundance of information is causing us to be very pessimistic.
Yeah, Doctor, if I may just add to what Chinta said just now, and what you said about a lot of Indonesian youth may be disenchanted or turned off by politics because they see it as a toxic culture. So I'd like to share a personal story. If you believe that politics is toxic, then you should join and detoxify it. Don't stay from the outside and in the end allow the toxicity to continue, because in the end, then your voice will never matter, because you have the same people who you yourself acknowledge is toxic to run our country. To share one personal experience, I remember before last election, which was a historic election for Malaysia because there was a change in government for the very first time since Malaysia's independence. I think about a year before election, I had to make a very difficult call, whether I should take up my master's in public policy in Oxford University with a scholarship, or do I go down the path of politics where I had to push back my master's, and knowingly that there will be threats along the way, because I lost almost all my sources of income, and my mom was a civil servant, my father, my brother were all threatened in their own respective ways. However, what pushed me forward is that while I had to put back some of my other aspirations, especially to do my master's in Oxford, I know that if the system is so problematic that they could do that to me and many others, then there's a greater moral calling to correct it, not to just sit idly or play safe, which in the end will allow many other young Malaysians to also be trapped by that very same system. So the end message is, if you believe that politics is very toxic, join it, change it, be the voice of change. And again, joining politics doesn't mean that you have to contest. You can also, everyone have their own respective influence, whether you can speak to your friends, your followers, to your family members. You can send that positive vibes of change, like what Heart Evangelista and Chinta spoke just now. One spoke very passionately about mental health, one more on education. That's politics, right? I mean, mental health issues are huge political issues. Education reforms are huge political issues. So everyone has a role to play. And I believe if you all play that role, we can be the change which we want to see.
Actually, I wanted to say something with Syed about joining politics, and literally and figuratively. My husband is actually a politician, and it's not that I don't want to be a politician. I feel like it's just not for me. But it's just being exposed to everything that goes on. I would join campaigns. Back in 2016, he ran for vice president, and I honestly, it was one of the, such an experience for me. But you're right, politics isn't just literally becoming a politician. It's actually just making your voice heard and actually campaigning for something that's important, that can make a certain issue, highlight a certain issue. And I love it how, Stinta, you and everybody that's on here that's really using their platform and doing something about the issues in our country and all over the world. And I think that itself is being a good politician. So yeah, thank you for changing my mind. I think I might become a politician.
Good. I want to take some questions from the public now. This one question from Nugroho from Indonesia. Guys, this is all you three. You stay home all the time because of the lockdown and everything. I mean, what do you do? What are your tips and tricks just to stay sane and to stay positive and upbeat, right? I think that's a good question. Yeah. So anyone want to answer?
May I go first this time?
Yes. Yeah. Don't tell me you do TikToks every day. Yeah. Go ahead.
Unfortunately not. Okay, so ever since I was very young, I've always been a planner. I've always loved creating itineraries, creating spreadsheets, just really organizing my day by the hour. And at the height of the pandemic, that's exactly what I did. I would schedule my day even to the most mundane activity, such as having breakfast. But by doing so, it allowed me to feel more productive. But because this pandemic has given me a lot of time to reflect upon myself and what I can do moving forward, it has actually allowed me to plan the year 2020 very well. And since I may say July or August, I've actually been very, very busy. Of course, I take major precautions and would never go to crowded places, but creating an itinerary helps make you feel productive. And again, reflection. I think this time is imperative to reflect upon your disadvantages, your advantageous traits, to allow you to plan better for the rest of the year and also the coming year, 2021. And I've created a lot of personal projects that I hope will benefit many people, one of which is actually creating a talk show that will start in 2021. And it will be involving mostly entertainers from Generation Z, but we will talk about important issues such as gender equality, sexual violence, racism, a lot of social issues, so that young kids that look up to these, young stars can, I guess, be more aware of how people think and perhaps make up their own decisions as to what it means to be a moral citizen.
Okay. Hart or Pak Sadiq, anything you want to add? What do you do to keep yourself happier during lockdowns?
Well, honestly, I'm not gonna deny. I mean, I've been on the go mostly all my life. I've been working for 24 years. So I honestly, when this lockdown happened, I didn't know what to do, what else to do. But again, while the whole world paused, your life paused, but it's your time to really rediscover yourself and what else you can do and what really matters in my life. And, I've been such a workaholic, but now I think I've actually mastered the art of balancing your personal life and social media and work. And I think that's really good. And then I feel like everything else just followed after that.
Okay, good. Pak Said?
Yep.
Maybe I'll ask you a different question if you don't mind, because you fascinate me because you're so young and you're trying to do things that are not conventional and represent a challenge to the norms, or some of the values that have been going on for some time. I'm sure a lot of people don't understand you, because being a politician that have new ideas, that's the risk. You meet people who don't understand you. But what do you say to people who don't understand you? Right.
I think it's important for me to be critical of myself as well, so that I understand why they don't understand me, and build that bridge, so that there is great empathy among ourselves, and I can serve them the best way possible. So there will be those who distrust me because I'm in politics and will question my motives, and they have all the reasons to do so, and these are legitimate concerns and issues which I need to address to show that I will stand for them, I will work for them, and that in the end I will work for their interests and not one which is based on selfish interests. So because I want to ensure that, again, the power distance gap can be resolved, and we see each other as a collective moving forward together. Because I believe that if we harness our diverse energy in Malaysia is a highly multiracial, multi-religious country. If we get to come together, we will be able to do great things together to move Malaysia forward.
Good. There's a question from Bella Maria in Philippines to Hart, obviously. Who else is she going to ask? With kids having to be homeschooled during the pandemic, and a lot of them feels they're disconnected to their friends. Most of them fall into depression. What do you think about this, and how do you find light in the dark tunnel? Yeah.
Well, for beginners, I feel that Filipinos are, they're family people. They're really like close knit, and I do believe that mothers are really there for their families. Usually here in the Philippines, the mothers don't work; they're always with their families and with their kids. And so I think it's important that they just create a good balance. They stay connected, with their hand in hand with their problems when it comes to school and personal life. And at the same time, I know, of course, because a lot of them rely on their children for the future, I guess it's also important that you have to create that perfect balance that they can also, get to play. Because online school is hard. I mean, I have twins here, and they're going crazy with the online school. It's so much pressure. So when they want time off to do whatever they want, I think it's important that you allow them to get dirty and play in the mud.
Okay, good. Well, unfortunately, we have come to the end of our session. This has been a wonderful session. I feel very inspired just listening to all of you, and I really appreciate your idealism, your energy, your passion to do good for others. I'm sure I speak for all of us in wishing you well, the best of luck, and I know whatever you do, in the future, we will see you as leaders of our societies in whatever form or in whatever forms. Yeah. So thank you very much, and best of luck, and stay safe from the COVID-19 pandemic. Thank you so much, everybody.
So much. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Have a beautiful evening.
All of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.